campaign accelerating as the campaign gets closer to the fall and the final stages. Plus, they'll be adding ultimately a VP candidate, so there's going to be a need to staff him or her. And then, of course, the campaign just in general is going to try to bring more resources to bear on the cause of defeating Barack Obama, and we should. I mean, his slogan of hope and change has turned into bait and switch, and we saw with the job numbers this morning, all of his promises about turning around the economy and all the good things he was going to do for the country have mostly been unfulfilled or broken. He doesn't deserve re-election, Martha, and we need to communicate that repeatedly and effectively.
Governor Jindal, what do you think about the job that has been done in terms of communicating the message? Because what I'm hearing from a lot of, folks that I talk to who are, former Republican campaign people, they're saying that they think the message that Mitt Romney gives needs to be more specific, that he needs to be bolder in the way that he's talking about exactly what kind of president he would be and what he would do with regard to health care, with regard to immigration, with regard to tax reform. What do you think about that?
Well, a couple of things. I think certainly you'll see the governor roll out additional details as the weeks come in the next few weeks. But I think the voters, we've been in Ohio together, we're in Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh today. I think voters understand this is the most important election of our lifetimes. These two different candidates offer two very different visions for America. Under President Obama, he has grown the federal government to 24% of the GDP, 23 million underemployed, unemployed Americans. He has grown taxes, grown spending, with Obamacare expanding government, creating a new entitlement program. Governor Romney offers a very different vision for the government and for our country. He wants to grow the private sector, not the public sector. He wants to shrink government spending. He wants to cut taxes. I think people understand that you've got two probably the most different views of the role of the government, the future of our economy, the future of our country in a presidential contest in probably a generation. This president's the most liberal, incompetent president probably since going all the way back to Jimmy Carter. And so there'll be a lot of dust-ups and a lot of distractions, especially from the presidential camp. The reality is the president can't run on his record, can't run on his broken promises. This is really about two very, very different visions for America.
So one of the big questions, of course, is the vice presidential pick, Governor Pawlenty. So when you and Governor Jindal are out there, are you arguing about which one of you is going to get the job?
Yeah, we've been leg wrestling over it for days.
Is that how they're going to pick one? Whoever survives the leg wrestling competition?
Yeah, but Bobby's thin, but he's scrappy. It's about tied at the moment. No, we're just kidding, of course. But the VP process is something we don't talk about in the campaign. Governor Romney's going to have a tremendous bench of talent to pick from the business sector, political sector, military, other backgrounds, who knows? But obviously, he's going to have a wonderful field to pick from, and he'll make a great pick.
And we'll see who it's going to be. Governor Jindal, they also talked about a foreign trip, an overseas trip, maybe 5 countries, including Israel, possibly Poland is on the list, going to London for the Olympics. Why do you think that kind of trip is important for the governor to do?
Well, look, I think certainly it's very good for him to reaffirm our commitment to our ally in the Middle East. Israel, one of our most important allies in the entire world. I think it's also a very good opportunity for the governor to contrast his foreign policy vision with the president's, make it very clear that the world is safer when America is strongest. We're going to stand up for our interests, make sure that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon, make sure that we stand up for our allies, that we are going to be a reliable ally and defend our values and make no apologies for America's exceptionalism and military might. Ultimately, I think this election will be largely decided on economic issues closer to home. I think the American people 4 years ago, remember, the president told us, give him 4 more years, give him 4 years, and if he couldn't get it done, he'd be a one-term president. 2 years ago, former President Clinton said give them 2 years. If they couldn't get it done, vote him out of office. I think the American voters remember that commitment. They know the country is not headed in the right direction. We can do better. We can do better than unemployment above 8% for over 40 months. We can do better than more government spending, more government borrowing from the Chinese.
And everybody has seen the numbers that came out this morning, Governor Pawlenty. Not very good on the jobs front. What do you want to hear Governor Romney articulate about how he would turn this situation around specifically?
Well, Martha, Governor Romney has put on the table some of the most specific proposals of any presidential candidate in the modern history of the country, and his experience and his vision in that regard comes not from a Washington, D.C. or political perspective like President Obama's, but it comes from an entrepreneurial perspective. He knows how to get businesses growing and started and providing jobs. And his proposals include reducing the corporate tax rate, across-the-board income tax cuts for individuals and small businesses, getting regulations more modern and lighter to encourage investment and job growth, getting a healthcare system that's focused on consumers and markets rather than having the government take over, getting American energy through shale gas and shale oil rather than trying to stifle American energy like President Obama, and more. So for those who say Governor Romney hasn't been specific enough or bold enough, I just don't think that's fair. He's got the most detailed, specific, and I think bold proposals by any benchmark. And he's out there every day communicating it. And by the way, he's at worst tied in the polls. And by some polls, he's even a little ahead.